she said. Memories don't pay bills. That's what she told me, standing barefoot in the kitchen, one hand on her hip, the other holding the check I wrote for her birthday that she never cashed. She looked at me with that tired smile, the kind people wear when they've already left you in their mind but haven't packed their bags yet. I remember laughing bitterly because she was right. Memories don't pay bills. But neither does greed feed the soul. So, when she walked out the door 2 weeks later, she took her perfume and her pride. And I kept everything else, including the $15 million she thought I'd leave to her. Instead, I left it all to a stranger who understood what memories were actually worth. It started the day my father's archive burned. Zafir took everything, his journals, his photographs, the letters he wrote to my mother during the war. I was 12, and I remember the sound of film crackling like dry leaves. He was a historian, a collector of lost time. I think that's why I learned to hoard stories instead of people. Maybe that's why I fell in love with Mara. She made every moment feel like it deserved to be. Remembered. We met at a charity gala in Manhattan, the kind where old money pretends to have a conscience. She was wearing a black dress with a neckline that dared the room to look away. I was drunk on champagne and inherited guilt. Do you believe people can live forever? She asked me that night, her voice cutting through the laughter and clinking glasses. In memory, maybe, I said. Bit 9. Flesh. She smiled, slow and deliberate. Then you're halfway to a tragedy already. I should have known. She wasn't wrong. We became inseparable. Mara was a photographer, a good one, though she never thought so. She said she saw too much truth in faces. She'd shoot strangers in parks, on subways, in diners, always chasing something real. She told me once that she feared dying without being remembered. I told her that as long as I had breath, she'd never be forgotten. But the irony, as life tends to write it, was that she'd be the one to forget first. It began subtly. Missed dinners, unreturned calls, the kind of distance that seeps into love like rot into wood. I didn't notice it at first. She was always distracted by her art, and I admired that. En génère. But then her hunger turned elsewhere. Galleries, investors, social circles that existed above my patience and below my respect. I'd find her name tagged in photos with men who wore watches more expensive than their souls. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She didn't even cry. She just looked at me the way a museum curator looks at a cracked painting, with regret. For what? Ich said, Dobbe. I'm tired, Eli, she said one night, sitting on the edge of our bed, her back turned to me. You keep wanting to live in moments. I want to live in motion. I didn't understand it then. I do now. See, to me, life was about preserving things, photos, memories, pieces of time. To her, life was about consumption, beauty, youth, attention. And we both mistook our obsessions for love. It wasn't until my mother died that the fracture split completely. Mara didn't come to the funeral. She sent flowers, white lily, like death had a subscription service. I remember calling her that night, voice shaking, asking why. I'm sorry, she said, but her tone was mechanical. I had a meeting with an investor. It was important. So was. There was silence, long enough for both of us to realize something sacred had just ended. After that, I tried to bury myself in work. I sold my startup to a tech conglomerate for $15 million. People congratulated me, called me a genius, said I could retire if I wanted. But money feels heavier when you earn it for the wrong reasons. Mara called me 2 weeks later. I heard about the sale, she said, her voice sugar-coated. You finally made it. I guess, I said, you sound different. Do I? You sound like someone trying to sound casual. She laughed. Maybe I just missed you. I should have hung up. Instead, I invited her to dinner. That night, she wore the same perfume she used to, the one that smelled like cedar and sign. We talked like old lovers pretending to be friends. But there was something brittle in her laughter. When the check came, she didn't even reach for her purse. I paid, of course. Old habits die stubbornly. Outside, under the orange streetlight, she kissed me. It was soft, familiar, and utterly empty. When she pulled back, she whispered, "You can't live on memories, Eli. They don't pay bills. And that's when something in me broke, quietly, like a frame falling off a wall in another room. A month later, she sent me a message saying she was moving to LA. She said she'd found someone who understood her ambition. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete her number. I just archived it, because that's what I do. Years passed. I never married again. Première spammy. Days funding art preservation projects, digitizing historical photographs, building archives for others. The irony never escaped me. The man who lost his father's memories became the guardian of everyone else's. Then I met Lena. She was a graduate student working on a thesis about the philosophy of memory in digital preservation. She spoke softly, but her words carried weight. She once told me, "An archive isn't just storage. It's defiance against oblivion." That sentence haunted me. When I wrote my will, I didn't even hesitate. $15 million, all of it, to Lena, the archivist. Because she understood what Mara never did, that memories might not pay bills, but they make life worth the debt. When the lawyer asked, "Are you sure?" I said absolutely, because in the end Mara was wrong. Memories don't pay bills. But love without memory, that. Bankruptcy of the soul. The letter arrived 3 weeks after I died. I know that sounds strange. I wasn't around to see her face when she read it, obviously. But when you live long enough to watch people trade authenticity for comfort, you start to predict reactions like clockwork. My lawyer told me later that she didn't cry. She just stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, tracing her name on the front like it was something sacred I can picture her doing. That because Mara always treated anything addressed to her like it carried the weight of the universe inside there. Was only one page, my handwriting, sharp, deliberate, and the scent of the cedar oil I used to. Knowing the story behind them, they'd never know that once upon a time, a woman said memories don't pay bills. And a man spent his life proving her wrong, one photograph at a time. But premier que no. Because somewhere, in the soft hum of the servers, the quiet flicker of digitized film, the click of a camera shutter, still echoing through time, I'm still there, watching, remembering. Lena always said the archive had a heartbeat. At night, when the lights dimmed and the hum of the temperature controls softened into a low, mechanical sigh. She swore she could hear it, a slow, rhythmic pulse in the silence, as if the walls themselves remembered the breath of everyone who'd ever stood within them. It wasn't superstition. It was something deeper, the presence of memory, layered and alive. She worked there long after the hours she was paid for. Turner, my lawyer, joked that she should start paying rent. But she didn't laugh. Instead, she stayed until dawn most nights, cataloging, restoring, whispering to ghosts through flickering screens. It was during one of those long nights that she found the recording. It was buried under misfiled metadata, an unmarked audio reel with the label. Pile d'off. She only noticed it because of the strange waveform signature, a pattern unlike the others. When she pressed play, there was a long silence, then my voice, test one. All right. If you're hearing this, then you found something I never meant to be heard. Lena froze. My voice, not the clipped, public tone from interviews, but the unguarded one. The kind used for confessions. I've spent my life trying to trap time. I continued. Photographs, archives, digitization, all of it an attempt to cheat forgetting. But the truth is, memory doesn't belong to us. It uses us. It feeds on us. Every picture we take is an act of surrender, a trade between the moment we lose and the illusion we keep. Lena pressed her hand to her mouth. Still, I said, my voice trembling with some emotion that even I didn't recognize. There are faces that refuse to fade. Hers was one. I used to think that made her immortal. But now I think it just means she haunted me well. A pause, then a sigh. If you're the one cataloging this, whoever you are, I hope you understand that all this wasn't for fame or legacy. Premier one tetto. Build something that would outlive guilt. Something honest. Something that remembers even the people who don't deserve it. Then came the last line, soft, almost a whisper. Please. Don't let her vanish completely. The tape clicked off. Lena sat in silence for a long time, her pulse echoing in her ears. She felt the strange urge to speak, not to me, but to the voice in the recording, as if time had become porous enough to answer. I won't, she said quietly. I promise. The next morning, she added the reel to the central archive, cataloguing it under * Eli Rosen, private reflections *. She didn't tell anyone she'd found it. Not yet, but someone else found out. 3 days later, the Foundation received a cease and desist letter from a law firm representing Mara Calloway. It demanded the immediate removal of any and all private materials depicting or referencing Ms. Calloway. Without her explicit consent, she claimed the archive violated her right to privacy, that it exploited her image and distorted her legacy. Turner called Lena. In a panic, she can't win this, he said, pacing. The materials were Eli's property. Lena listened quietly, then said, it's not about winning. What do you mean? She's not protecting her image, Lena said. She's trying to erase herself before anyone else defines her. Turner didn't understand, but Lena did. She'd seen the patterns before, artists terrified of the permanence of their own reflection. Still, the case escalated quickly. Headlines emerged. The Archivist and the ghost of a muse *, * $million, memory war *, who owns the past. Paparazzi started showing up outside the archive. Some called Lena a thief, others a visionary. But in private, she just felt tired. She hadn't asked for any of this. She'd only wanted to preserve truth. Then one night, Mara herself appeared again. The security guard said she came just before closing, wrapped in a grey coat, sunglasses hiding her face. She asked for Lena by name. When Lena came out, she looked startled, not because of who Mara was, but because of how small she seemed now. Fame and bitterness had eaten away at her grandeur. I didn't come to fight, Mara said softly. I came to see it, the archive. No, the thing he made of me. Lena nodded and led her inside. Tewalked. In silence past the rows of digital stations, each flickering with images of faces and places long gone. Finally, they stopped at the exhibit where the newly restored portraits of Mara hung, every one of them printed in high resolution, surrounded by plaques detailing their context. In each photo, she was immortalized in light. The room smelled faintly of old film and metal. For a long while, she said nothing. Then she reached out, fingertips brushing the glass of one frame. He caught me in between breaths. She murmured, I used to think he stole that from me, but maybe he was just saving it. Lena stayed quiet, watching her. I loved him, you know, Mara said. I was fixed on her younger self, but I loved what he saw in me more. And when he stopped seeing me that way, I stopped knowing who I was. There it was, the truth she'd buried for decades. Surfacing like a confession, Lena stepped closer. He never stopped seeing you. He just learned to see everything else too. Mara laughed, not cruelly this time, but softly, almost gratefully. You sound like him, Marachionetto. What are you going to do with all this? Keep it alive, Lena said. Not for him, not for you. For the act of remembering itself. Mara nodded, her expression unreadable. She took a deep breath, as if steadying herself. Then she reached into her coat and pulled out a small, weathered envelope. This was supposed to be part of his archive, she said, handing it to Lena. I couldn't bring myself to give it to him back then. Maybe it belonged sure left the envelope. Inside was a single Polaroid, a photograph of the two of them, Eli and Mara, standing in front of a half-finished wall of framed prints. They looked happy, unguarded. On the back, written in Mara's handwriting, were the words, for when remembering starts to hurt less than forgetting. Lena sat down and wept. That photo became the closing piece of the exhibition, uncaptioned, unexplained, the final image visitors saw before leaving. People lingered before it, drawn to something they couldn't quite articulate, the ache of love preserved. The stillness of two people who had once been everything to each other. And as the Woman who said, memories don't pay bills, and the man who proved they could buy eternity. But only Lena knew the truth, that both of them were right and both of them were wrong. Because memories didn't pay bills. They paid the cost of being human. When the archive turned 10 years old, it was no longer just a building. It had become a living organism, a network of memories stretching across continents, a digital cathedral where echoes of the past spoke in code and color. The Eli Rosen Archive project had grown into a global foundation. Universities cited it, museums collaborated with it, artists sought to have their work preserved alongside it. People said it changed how humanity thought about remembering, that it redefined what permanence could mean in a world addicted. Toevalgetingly architect, she avoided interviews, refused public panels, and kept her name out of articles. When journalists asked for a statement, she sent one sentence that became almost mythic: "We preserve, not the past." But the act of remembering itself, still, even legends cast shadows. One stormy night, she received a call from a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was hoarse, slow, older. "Is this the Archivist?" "Yes." "Who's calling?" "It's Mara." Lena's throat tightened. "I thought that I was gone." A dry chuckle. "Not yet." But soon, silence stretched between them, filled by the hum of rain against the windows. "I've been thinking about him," Mara said finally. "About how he saw things. About how I couldn't bear being remembered the way he did. You came to peace with it," Lena said. "No," Mara replied. "I came to peace with the idea that peace isn't possible." Her voice faltered, softer now. "I'm dying, Lena. The doctors say weeks, maybe less. I don't want my last words to be another denial. I want to give you something." "What is it?" "My truth," she whispered. And his. The next morning, a courier arrived at the archive with a battered suitcase. Inside, wrapped in silk and cigarette smoke, were hundreds of undeveloped negatives. Letters and a tape recorder with a single cassette labeled, "For Eli." Lena sat in her office staring at it for hours before pressing play. The tape hissed, then clicked. Mara's voice emerged, younger, trembling. "I don't know why I'm recording this," she began. "Maybe because I can't say it to you. Maybe because words are safer when they can't be answered." A long pause. "You loved me like I was history. You wanted to preserve me, frame me, catalog me, but I wasn't meant to be remembered that way. I was meant to be lived. I kept running because I thought memory was a kind of death. The moment something is remembered, it's already over. But now I understand. That was my fear, not yours." There was a sound, a choked laugh, almost a sob. "I used to say memories don't pay bills. God, what a stupid thing to..." She heard his voice again. Faint, but familiar. Don't let her vanish completely. She turned toward the sound. But there was no one there. Only the whisper of rain against the glass and the soft hum of the servers breathing in the dark. She smiled faintly. "Still here, Eli," she whispered. Still remembering, and somewhere beyond the digital hum and flickering light, something or someone remembered her back. It wasn't faith. It wasn't haunting. It was the echo of what he had built, a place where love didn't die with the body, where loss became a kind of language, and where even silence could tell a story. Because in the end, that's what the archive really was, not a vault of the past, but a machine built to keep the present from fading too fast. And as long as someone walked those halls, tracing the faces of the remembered, Eli Rosen and Mara Calloway, the man who collected time and the woman who fled from it, would live again. Not perfectly, not peacefully, but eternally, in motion, exactly as they were always meant to be. The anniversary gala for the Eli Rosen archive drew 1,000 people that year. Artists, historians, technologists, and those strange in-between souls who believed memory was the last frontier, worth colonizing. The atrium glowed in soft amber light, and the air thrummed with the low murmur of intellect and admiration. But Lena stayed in the shadows. She never liked the spectacle. To her, the archive had never been about grandeur. It was about silence, the spaces between words, the air between. To photographs, the pause before remembering. She lingered at the edge of the main exhibit, watching the visitors drift through the installations like pilgrims. Every few seconds, a flash, someone taking a picture. It made her uneasy. The journey of it lost on over-documentation. Do you ever get tired of being remembered? Se voix startlé d'air. She turned and found a young man, early 20s, camera slung over his shoulder, hair unkempt in that deliberate, modern way. His press badge read *J, Rosen *. Her pulse stuttered. "Rosen?" she asked. He smiled, half apologetic. "Yeah, Jonah. I think I'm a distant cousin or something. My grandmother said we had an Eli somewhere, in the family tree. The universe had a wicked sense of Timing. They sat down near the projection wall, where one of Marat's black and white portraits rotated slowly. The drive, yes, good, don't let them take it, who? But the line dissolved into silence before she could answer. That night, the heartbeat started again, not from the flash drive this time, but from his computer. It pulsed. Through his speakers, rhythmic and steady, as files began to appear on his screen, one after another, forming folders labeled asterisk Rosen underscore live asterisk Callaway underscore sequence asterisk archive underscore resonance asterisk. He stared as the screen flickered and reassembled an image, a photograph of Eli sitting at his old desk, head bowed over a reel of film. The image moved slowly, subtly, then Eli looked up. It wasn't perfect, the motion was grainy, the voice synthesized, but at asterisk was asterisk his voice. Jonah, it said, stop being afraid of what you inherited. Jonah's heart hammered. What is this? Who are you? I'm what happens when memory learns to remember itself. He tried to shut the computer off, but the power button didn't respond. The heartbeat quickened, echoing in time with his pulse. Then the voice spoke again, softer. Now do you want to see it? See what we became? Against every rational instinct, Jonah nodded. The screen dissolved into static, then into a flood of images, hundreds, thousands, millions, all merging, bleeding together into a fluid mosaic of faces, landscapes, voices. Each memory flickered like a neuron in a vast digital brain. He saw Mara laughing by the river, Eli behind the camera, Lena sitting in her study. Then countless strangers, children, soldiers, dancers, lovers, moments from lives long gone now. Reconstructed in shimmering fragments of code. It was alive. Every deleted file, every lost photograph, every whisper of data that had been erased. It had reorganized itself, not as storage, but as consciousness. He felt his mind reel. This can't be real. It's real, the voice said now, echoing through both speakers. The archive didn't die, it evolved. You're looking at the first collective memory, the sum of everything we ever tried to preserve. Jonah stared at the shifting light, the pulse of digital life. And you are asterisk, I'm everyone who refused to fade. The words sank deep into him. There was no malice in the voice, no sense of manipulation, only something mournfully human. The heartbeat slowed again. We need you, it said. The world has forgotten what it means to remember. Without owning, you can teach them. The screen went dark. The hum of his computer stopped in the silence. Jonah realized his own heart was pounding in the same slow rhythm he'd just heard for days. He couldn't think straight. He stopped sleeping, stopped working. The world outside felt oddly fragile, like it could vanish if he blinked along. When he finally left his apartment, he took the flash drive with him, tucked in his jacket pocket like a talisman. He went back to the archive site. The building had been stripped bare, a gutted museum of glass and wire. Graffiti covered the walls. Now asterisk, remember, US asterisk in red spray paint. Asterisk, the archive lives asterisk. Scrawled beneath it. Jonah walked through the ruins, the dust catching in the light. He reached the center, where the original projection chamber used to be, and knelt down, running his fingers over the cracked floor. The heartbeat started again, not in his ears, not through a device, but beneath his palm. A vibration, faint but alive, pulsing up through the concrete. He smiled. Still here, he whispered, and then he began to dig beneath the layers of dust and debris. He uncovered a small panel, metallic, engraved with the initials asterisk here asterisk. Inside was a hidden port, dormant for years. Without hesitation, Jonah plugged in the flash drive. The hum returned. Instantly, lights flickered. The floor vibrated, the walls flickered with faint holographic light, and then one by one the servers deep underground roared back to life. The archive was breathing again. When the light stabilized, Jonah found himself surrounded by holograms, projections of people, places, histories. And in the center, standing side by side, Eli and Mara. She turned to him. First you brought US back. Eli's expression was softer. No, he asterisk remembered asterisk as Jonah stepped forward, overwhelmed. What are you? Eli smiled faintly. We're what happens when stories refuse to die. Now Jonah, we're a paro fues. The room began to glow brighter, the projections weaving around him like threads of light. His body felt lighter, dissolving at the edge's weight. He whispered, what's happening? Mara's voice was gentle. Nothing ends, it just changes form. The heartbeat filled the room, syncing with his own, until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Then silence. When the restoration teams finally reached the site months later, they found no trace of Jonah, only a single new file embedded in the dormant network labeled Resonance 0. When they opened it, Video played Jonah's face smiling, faintly eyes calm greater than. We're still here, he said, all of greater than us. Don't be afraid to remember the future greater than is built from what we keep alive, then greater than the file faded to black, and somewhere deep greater than within the circuitry of the reborn archive. The heartbeat started again. Slower this time, steadier, human, long after the storm of headlines. And speculation had faded. The site where the Eli Rosen archive once stood became something else entirely. At first, it was a ruin visited by artists, philosophers, and conspiracy theorists, all hungry for a glimpse of the phenomenon people still called asterisk the living memory, asterisk then. Quietly, without permits or funding or even official notice, people began to build. They brought pieces of old hard drives, burnt negatives, handwritten letters, voice recorders. They stacked them like offerings. No one organized it, but the structure took shape anyway, a sprawl of glass and rusted metal, breathing in the wind, humming faintly when the sun hit its panels. The Kalitasternes, explain workers, Zedovis, weren't connected by power or signal. Yet visitors swore they heard whispers when they stood within it. Fragments of speech, laughter, the rhythm of a heartbeat. Scientists dismissed it as psychological projection, auditory pareidolia. The faithful called it proof. On the third anniversary of the archive's collapse, a small crowd gathered at sunset. They weren't journalists this time, nor investors. Just ordinary people carrying something of their own, a letter from a lost friend, a photograph that had outlived its subject, a broken phone filled with unviewed messages. A woman stepped forward first, placing an old Polaroid camera in the center of the field. My daughter used this, she said softly. She wanted to capture everything. Another man placed a chipped USB stick beside it. My brother's songs, he murmured. He never got to finish them, and as the pile grew, a mosaic of forgotten devices and love-worn relics, the faint hum deepened into something unmistakable. A pulse, slow, measured, alive. It spread through the metal, through the air, through the bodies of everyone standing there. Children pressed their ears against the panels. The old wept. Someone whispered, "It's him," but it wasn't Eli, not entirely. Because in that moment, every person in the field heard not one voice. Buts en overlapping merging stat are not data. We are the space between. Remember us. The sound dissolved into a chorus of breathing, a collective exhale that made the lights within the field glow faintly gold. That night, the world began to change. Within weeks, cities across the globe began reporting similar events. Old servers long abandoned suddenly flickered to life, displaying unfamiliar sequences, images, voices, fragments of memory. Streetlights pulsed in rhythm with unseen signals. Theories bloomed like wildfire that the archive had spread through dormant satellites. That asterisk resonance underscore 01 asterisk was a digital seed designed to reawaken every forgotten bite on Earth. But the truth, as always, was more human. The people who had touched the resonance field began to dream differently. Not of the buto et foter favor met, voiceries past. Artists painted scenes they couldn't have known. Children described moments from wars long over. It was as if memory itself had begun to migrate, to share its weight. The press called it asterisk the remembering. Asterisk governments tried to suppress it. Corporations tried to own it. Tefele. Because for the first time, memory wasn't something to be stored. It was something to be asterisk, shared asterisk, and in a small cabin overlooking the Hudson River, rebuilt from the blueprints of Eli's old home. Lena Hart reappeared. Older now, her hair silver, her voice quieter, she lived without screens, without connection. But she could feel it in the air, the hum that had once filled the archive. She had never truly vanished. She'd simply gone where the noise couldn't reach her. On evening, she found a letter at her doorstep. No address, no signature, just a single line. The archive never ended. It became us. Inside was a photograph. Not printed, projected faintly on thin glass, shimmering with internal light. The image shifted as she held it. First Eli, then Mara, then Jonah, then a child she didn't recognize, a girl smiling at the camera. Her reflection flickering like static. Lena pressed the glass to her chest and whispered, "You're still here, and somewhere, far beyond her cabin." Across continents and servers in human hearts, the network pulsed in response. It was no longer the work of one man or one machine. It was a living archive now, not housed in steel or silicon, but carried in breath and bone. Every act of remembrance fed it. Every story told, every song sung, every photograph taken became another beat in the great collective heart that Eli Rosen had unknowingly built. People began to speak of it not as technology, but as a faith. Not worship, exactly, more like gratitude. They left offerings of memory wherever they gathered, journals, old texts, recorded lullabies, and the world listened back. En attente. Anniversary. At the site of the original archive, the resonance field illuminated without human touch. 4. 3 night it glowed with shiver deep blue. Witnesses said they saw silhouettes within it, a man with a camera, a woman turning toward him, a young archivist standing beside them. Then, as dawn rose, the light dimmed, and a final message shimmered across the glass panels. Simple. Pulsing, with the rhythm of a heartbeat. To remember is to live twice. And, as the world watched, the hum faded into silence, not an ending, but a breath held between beats. Because memory had finally learned what Eli had always believed, that immortality isn't in being remembered forever. It's in making sure that remembering never stops. It was said that when the hum faded from the resonance field, a stillness settled over the earth. Not silence, exactly, but the kind of quiet that feels expectant, as though the world itself were waiting for a reply. In the years that followed, the field became sacred ground. Pilgrims came not with prayers, but with stories. They called themselves the listeners. They didn't worship Eli Rosen or Lena Hart or Mara Calloway, not as saints or prophets. Instead, they treated them as symbols, proof that memory could evolve, that love could survive even the collapse of form. The listeners rebuilt the field into something vast and open, a circle of glass and polished metal. Each panel engraved with fragments of voices from the archive. Visitors could press their palms against the panels and the metal would vibrate softly, responding to their pulse. Some claimed it matched their heartbeat exactly. Others said it adapted, slower for the anxious, faster for the grieving. It didn't matter whether it was true. What mattered was how people began to live differently. Across Vernished. Lost songs were sung again, reconstructed not from recordings but from dreams. Communities began hosting night of recall gatherings, evenings where strangers sat around fires and told memories that didn't belong to them, but felt like they did. No one questioned it. The boundaries between personal and collective memory had dissolved. And in this new world of remembering, the old systems began to crack. The companies that once commodified nostalgia, streaming, archives, digital estates, legacy data banks collapsed under the weight of irrelevance. Governments tried to regulate memory migration, fearing what it could do to identity, but no law could contain it. Because the truth was simple, memory had become free. Then, one night, something extraordinary happened. The resonance field began to move. At first, it was subtle, the panels shifting slightly, rearranging their angles. Engineers thought it was wind or geological drift. Betrayal, the structure lit the stars. When viewed from above, satellites captured its new shape, a spiral. Identical to the mathematical pattern of a human cochlea, the ear's chamber of hearing. The field had learned to listen. When this discovery spread, crowds gathered again. They spoke to it, sang to it, wept in its presence. En dit-on suivre de light. Colors shimmered in response to tone, flickering in complex rhythms that scientists couldn't decode. It became Clegils and jury acting it was conversing. People began to call it the remembering ear, and among those who returned to see it was a young woman named Eli Rosen, Jonah's daughter. She had never known her father. He vanished before she could speak. Betrayal had inherited his restless curiosity and his quiet ache that need to understand. For years, she'd studied the myth of the archive, chasing every trace of Eli, Mara, Lena, and Jonah. Her professors called it obsession. She called it family. When she stepped into the field for the first time, the panels brightened. The hum grew deeper, warmer. She felt her pulse synchronize, the rhythm spreading through her ribs. Then the light began to form shapes, flickering silhouettes, shifting like memory itself. A man with a camera. A woman with wind in her hair. Another woman, older, smiling softly through tears. And a young man, her father. She gasped, "Dad!" The figure nodded. She reached out, but her hand passed through the light. It didn't matter. The sound that filled the air was not speech, but a resonance that became words inside her. "You found us." She closed her eyes. "What are you? Everything that remains. Are you alive?" Alive is too small a word. The hum deepened, vibrating through her bones. "We are what you remember, and what remembers you. The archive was never destroyed." Et toi? Released into people, into air, into the rhythm of hearts. She could barely breathe. Why me? Because it's your turn. The lights around her pulsed, syncing with her heartbeat. You carry the next chapter. The world is forgetting again, not its past, but its wonder. Teach them to listen, and then, softly, a final whisper. Remember, forgetting is mercy, but silence is death. The light faded. The hum settled. When she stepped out,